We've discussed several times on this channel how rider behavior has contributed to ride-related injuries. In fact, this is the leading cause of injuries on most rides. We've also looked at several recorded examples of rider misbehavior on various rides. But one thing we've yet to look at is the second most likely cause for rider injury, which is ride operator mistakes or misbehavior. While the vast majority of ride operators are professionals who understand the risks involved in their job, some do not take their job seriously for a variety of reasons. This video is not intended to shame anyone, but rather look at these examples and point out what has happened and what should be avoided. Today we'll be reacting to some clips from several different parks of ride operators not behaving according to their training and acting in ways that could cause harm to riders or, in some cases, themselves. For privacy reasons, I'll be blurring the faces of those involved, as again, this video is not designed to expose anyone or point anyone out, and several of these clips are several years old, and people do ultimately change. Let's go ahead and start with the first clip. Alright, so we got an operator here, and oh boy, I have seen all these before, but geez. Okay, so we're going to have a stapling situation here. So for those that don't know, this is when you push a lap bar down significantly far, much further than designed. Oh my god, this is... yeah, this is just excessive at this point. Yeah, so... I don't know what to say. Obviously, that's not a good thing. So... there is a difference between a lap bar being properly secured and being too high. There's also a difference between a lap bar being properly secured and being too low. And there are cases where a lap bar being too low and stapled can actually cause harm to riders. So an example recently was the Jetline accident at Groenland. In that case, the lap bars were forced into riders during the course of that accident, which actually resulted in some very serious injuries. In fact, the majority of people injured were not ejected from the train. They stayed in the train and had the lap bar forced into them. So yeah, a situation like this, you really don't want to be pushing a lap bar that far into somebody. So moving on to the next clip here, we have one from SeaWorld. And so this one really doesn't look that bad when you're just looking at it. Like, looks fine, you know, they check the seats, couple seconds. It's honestly not even that great of a dispatch time, let's be real here, but okay, you know, they ran down the train. The problem really comes in, like, the entire point of having operators check restraints is not just to make sure they're not up. The ride, in this case, does that for them. They're checking to make sure it doesn't come back up. So, like, on this channel, we've discussed, like, slipped ratchets, where a restraint may pop up a ratchet from where it's locked, which this ride has ratcheting restraints, and that is completely possible if you're not pulling up on those restraints hard, especially on a B&M like this. So yeah, they are relying very heavily on those seat sensors, and for those of you who know anything about ride accidents in the city of Orlando, seat sensors, I don't know if you should really rely that much on them. Also, important thing to note here, the train behind this one's still stacked. They were not being that efficient. Like, it would be different if, like, the train was dropping off the block brake in this clip, but no, the train is literally behind the station. This is not efficient operations. There's a way to operate rides efficiently, and running up and down the platform like a maniac is not how you do it. Alright, this next one we have is just a picture. I don't have any video for this one, but, I mean, just look... This is the trashiest thing I've ever seen. Like, obviously, ride operator on their phone, main problem here, but like all the faded paint, the panel like falling apart, like this. This is why Cedar Fair merged with Six Flags. Like, this needed some correction. But looking at the operator, this is just terrible. To get to a point where something like this is possible, a lot has to go wrong. And worst of all, this is on a flying coaster in this. And as we'll see in the next picture, there can be some serious consequences if someone's not paying attention on a ride of this type. Speaking of that, let's move to the next picture. Okay, so this is from a popular YouTuber, but essentially these restraints have a foot flap rather, that has to be pushed down with a rider's legs behind it. If that's not done, you get something like this, where someone's leg is literally hanging out of the restraint. Now, as far as being secured, they are still secure in the train. They have the shoulder harness, but there's no way that was a comfortable ride. In addition to that, there's a very good chance that their leg is not in the clearance envelope for the ride. So anything around the ride, they run the risk of hitting that, and trying to keep your leg balanced up against the train, against the forces of the ride, I can't imagine would be very practical or comfortable. So definitely very bad, and this is pretty much a result of that last photo, which I think is kind of funny that both of those exist. But anyway, let's move on to the next. Oh boy, so it looks like we're on an older wooden coaster, no restraints. Oh gosh, this is... oh boy. So, I mean, there's just so much wrong with this, and the more that you look, the worse it gets. So we've got some kind of test ride or employee ride going on, and there's a lot. So for one, we've got the person in the front row here with their phone out. Obviously, that is a problem. But beyond that, obviously, we have riders who are just floating above the restraints. I think there's often kind of a thing with ride operations where you get in the mindset, you'll see it at just anywhere, but don't know why ride operations specifically will get it, where operators start to feel like it's their ride, they know the ride best, they know what they can do, what they can't do. And it can lead to situations like this, where there is no other restraint on this ride. Actually, it might have seatbelts. I'm not familiar. But either way, they're not being used if they're there. And sitting like that above a grab bar, probably not a very safe idea. It's very important to remember that being under the restraint is not just there for normal ride activities. In the event where something were to go wrong with this ride, let's say, it stalls for some reason, big gust of wind slows it down, or there's some kind of mechanical failure that causes it to suddenly stop, those riders are being ejected forwards and out of this ride. So yeah, not a good idea. Not a good idea at all. All right, we got another picture. This one's not quite as bad. I would just say that this one makes me really nervous. Seeing that water bottle, well, Gatorade or Powerade bottle, directly leaning on the e-stop. I mean, it's not doing any harm, but there's no concern. If it leaks, the panel's gonna be fine. But just can imagine setting that down, not paying attention, and e-stop button gets pressed. Which again, not gonna be the end of the world, but just not a situation you want to put yourself in. All right, so this is probably the worst of the videos. There is so much wrong in this picture. Jeez. So, first of all, obviously the cell phone. That's kind of what is the focus of this video. I mean, you cannot enforce a rule that you don't follow yourself. So, I mean, the texting while leaving the station is pretty assertive. However, what's harder to notice, the seatbelt on that ride is not buckled at all. It's completely unbuckled, and the lap bar is very high on both riders in the front row, which are employees. Yeah, not setting a good example there, and just because you feel like you know a ride because you've worked it or have been around it quite a bit does not mean you do, and does not mean you should go beyond manufacturer recommendations. This is also on an Intamin hypercoaster, which are a little bit notorious for not having the safest restraints to begin with. So I really don't think pushing it just because you're familiar with the ride is going to be a very good decision. Yeah, there's a lot with this one. Let's move on to the last one. All right, lastly, this is our European friends showing us that it's not just Americans that do stupid things. I get that at this park, this might even be something that is allowed, but I don't think it should be. There's just, sure, the train is not, and I believe this ride runs with one train. You're not going to get hit by the train, at least not immediately. But there is a lot of moving parts where that, I don't know if this is a catch car or chain lift, but regardless, there's a lot of moving parts in there, and that train is going to come back. So if your other operator isn't paying attention, you could have a bad situation. If you were to fall, trip, anything like that, get your foot caught, just not a good idea. Just wait for that train to come back to the station before crossing. I don't think your life is worth that extra minute and a half. Yeah, let's conclude this video. And with that, that is all of the sketchy things that ride operators have been seen doing that I was able to find for this video. If you know of any clips like this or anything else you'd like to see me react to, feel free to submit it to the video submission form found in the video's description. As always, thanks for watching this more lighthearted video. If you're new, be sure to subscribe to see more things covering all topics in ride safety. And with that, we'll see you next time.